Okay, girls, for our next quilt that we're making, the finished quilt will look something like this. Here's a peek at some of the fabrics we're going to be using for the quilt. Super excited. This is the quilt square. Each of you will get a copy of this. You can see that this will be one color, and then these four right here will be another color, and then we'll have two pieces of white. I got a little wet. And this is what it's going to look like when it's finished. Just for this tutorial, I'm going to be using these fabrics, and Kaylin is going to help video me. Now, something to remember is that the sewing machine and going to the iron are your most important tools for this project. First thing I'm going to do is sew these three together. Go back over here. Go back over here. And that's what these three are going to be. You'll have your center and you'll have two ends. Put your right sides together. Another trick that I've done is I've drawn a line right here. I took a measuring tape and measured from my needle to this edge is a perfect 1/4 inch. So I know I'll have a 1/4 inch seam if I keep my fabric along this line just like this. When you're quilting, you don't have to make any knots. Don't mind the noise. I have a very noisy sewing machine. Okay, I'm going to trim my thread. I have my settings so that I'm doing a very small stitch, and that's one reason you don't have to put knots in your quilting. Plus you'll be going over the thread again on a different direction at some point. Okay, this is where we're going to iron. Always important to iron. I use a hot setting because we're doing 100% cotton with steam. For this project, we're going to iron with the seams pointed out, like this. I'll show you. And I always go like this and push the seam open as best I can. I iron it quite a bit, and then by pushing the seam open, your seams go that direction. Okay. Next we're going to add these two with your right sides together. This is a really small project and you don't need pins, because you can hold it together with your hands. If you were doing a more detailed project, pins would be a benefit. Right sides together. And you can see there's a little bit sticking out on this side because it's not perfectly the same length, but that's okay. I line it up with the smallest ones. And I've got it on this line exactly, so I know that I'm a 1/4 inch And it is important that all of us have the exact same seam so our squares end up the same size. You can see that's a 1/4 inch seam right there. I'm going to iron again. I'm going to iron out again. When you're sewing clothing, you always sew the seams open. When you're sewing quilting, you don't. You always sew the seams to the same side. See? I'll sew it again, or iron it one more time for good measure. Now we're going to add our white top and bottom. Right sides together. Now for this one's a little bit bigger. I'm going to go ahead and use a pin. This just makes your job easier so you don't lose track of what you're doing. Again, we don't have a perfect square here. You can see that one side's a little bit bigger than another. But once you sew it all, it's all going to end up being close enough. Once you sew all your squares together, there's forgiveness there. Okay. Last 2 rows to stitch. We're going to iron again. And in this case, let's see, let me see if I want to iron in. Usually want to try to iron away from the white, so I am going to iron in. I'm going to pick up my fabric to give me a little let me see. The reason I'm ironing in is because this is going to be a white fabric and we don't want it to show underneath if we can help it. We want to iron that open as best we can. That's why we're using high heat and steam. That's all you have to do. 3 colors. You'll have a center color, an outside color, and 2 white edges. And when we're done putting the pieces together, it's going to look something like this.